I thought. Yeah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields along with Rogan Smith. All of them, they're out of the garbage, right? All of them? Okay, so they were all there. This isn't it here, eh? No,
no, it was out.
But they're all there because I just took all there, so they must have. Here, let me sort through some for you while you're doing
this is one right here. Okay.
You literally didn't see when I grabbed them up?
No.
Because I was standing right next to you.
Okay, here you go. Okay, those are thank you, darling.
Yeah, thank you.
What?
Well, I thought it was garbage. And I even moved the magazine.
So you moved the magazine. I was always on my phone.
Yeah, probably was on your phone.
Thank God I had no money stashed up in there.
Yeah, no one stashes money in newspapers, yeah. Okay, good.
Just rest my stuff
yeah, so soon there's going to be a lot of armed robbery with people with newspapers. Mm-hmm. Okay,
Hey, Nick.
Hey.
Bring it down, Nick. Bring it down.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me back.
I know, right?
I got a note from your dad, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
I won't read it.
Hope it was respectful.
Oh, you want me to give you this chair?
Don't worry about it.
No, man. Let me give you this chair. Let me give you this chair.
No, it's like
I warmed it up.
It's like I'm warming up the mic. It's like a singing thing. Okay.
Total chaos. This is how we survive. You see why we can't get the icon? You see?
You're so silly.
Okay, yeah.
Is that up?
There you go.
But listen, let me ask you a question. Your chair should be higher. This is high.
No, this is fine here.
Okay, but you can raise it up. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it's cool. It only goes up a little bit. See?
Okay.
Sorry, but you heard back from my dad, or you heard from my dad?
Well, he sent an email, yeah. So, and actually, you know what? I got to respond, and that's. Let me just.
He was giddy like a schoolgirl, man. He was really happy to get in touch with you again.
Let me just put a did not read thing next to that. Okay, like unread.
Yeah.
Did you tell him how his son is performing?
I haven't responded.
Well, are you going to tell him?
I'm going to respond. Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Be as honest as you need to be.
He owes me some stuff anyway, so I got to get in touch with him.
He owes any money?
Probably some money. I don't know.
Wouldn't put it by him.
Yeah. So it's been today is Thursday.
Tomorrow's Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Oh, that's scary. But we're almost done. Weekend's coming.
That's good, because Friday the 13th is always good for me.
Yeah, because you were born on the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
Oh, that's cool.
So some good stuff tomorrow, boy.
Tuck yourself.
Yeah,
maybe I'm gonna have like a harem tomorrow or something.
A harem?
A what?
A harem?
I call it harem.
Yeah, that's inaccurate.
That is not correct.
That's not the correct
pronunciation. Like a group of women, right?
I can tell you how you pronounce harem.
I always thought it was harem. Yeah, harem.
It is harem.
Yeah,
don't listen to him.
Harem.
But harem.
It's not even like tomatoes. That's just wrong.
Exactly. Oh, Nick, you're going to have to come here permanently.
No.
We can gang up on him.
Harem. I think it's pronounced harem.
No, it's not.
Well, I think it is.
Okay, we'll go on dictionary.com.
Okay.
And play the pronunciation.
Yeah, often confused harem. Is sometimes confused with harem. Similar sound. Let's see.
You were talking about
harem.
Okay, what's a harem?
Where you have the gals.
No,
that's a harem. That's a harem.
Well, what's harem?
I don't know.
It sounds like a foreign guy's name.
The Maharaja of Delhi had a very fine harem.
Yeah, like a group of women.
Yeah. But not a harem.
Harem. You hear that?
How you pronounce that? What's that? H-A-R-E-M?
Excuse me, dictionary.com. How do you spell it? How do you pronounce that?
They don't know what they're talking about.
Okay, so she don't know.
It's a woman.
And me and her don't know. Excuse me.
She's in the harem.
Oh, you better get up out of here.
No, I'm not getting out of there.
You get up out of here.
She's a harem.
No.
I'm the haremer.
You need more than one for it to be a...
You didn't hear that
you're
part,
so
right?
stale.
But yeah, I'm not getting one anyway, so it doesn't matter.
You better believe it.
Wouldn't that be a wonderful gift to a male?
What is Ed?
A group of women?
Idiot.
Yes, you put that in there.
I just asked her. I just said, what are you?
Yeah, no, I know what you did. You asked it and then pushed it. So watch this now. Wow. Yeah, watch this. We could do that. How do you do this in the?
Don't worry.
Sound of word.
Come on, guys, get along. Thursday, the weekend's almost here.
Word.
If he's not an idiot, what is he?
Yeah, now, yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah. Well, why are you being like that? Okay. Sound of words. That's not nice.
You type too low.
I think
just
go to Google. They'll say the word for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah. I know. I find me a word now.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I already know what word you're looking for. Mm-hmm. I already know. Anyway, Nick, how are you?
No, I'm doing well. Just enjoying the Thursday, I suppose.
How are you enjoying our immaturity?
Oh, it's good. It's a lot of fun. I've had every time I come here, it's a 10 out of 10 experience for enjoyment.
Hey, you hear that?
I've heard it.
10 out of 10.
What is Rogan?
When?
Make sure your volume's on.
This just proves my first 2 points.
I got to touch it. Okay. Yeah.
What?
Here it comes. I heard it.
He heard it.
I heard it.
You take it.
Did you say
it's okay.
Oh my God, it's so lame.
It did happen. I heard it. I did hear it, Mr. Fields. I did hear it.
She's making noise over it.
So.
No, hey,
there it
said
is.
a whole other things that I don't want you to hear. I was going to say nincompoop.
Nincompoop. Yeah, I did hear it. I heard it.
That was a fail.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you did because you're a technical person. All right, so what else is going on?
Oh, you see all
I'm very hot.
the hoopla. What? It's summer.
No, but I mean, what happens is, and I've not felt this before, outside is extremely hot. Let me tell you how hot it is. I've never seen this. I saw a utility company. They're carrying around their own tent.
Yes, that's smart.
That's smart, actually.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
sun.
what they should have been doing.
Yeah.
But that's how oppressive the heat is, right?
They should have been doing
and
that.
it seems to me that when I go outside now, it's so hot that it literally seems to take a longer period of time than I recall to cool down. When you get inside, I just, maybe it's a long sleeve shirt.
That's probably what it is.
But
This
boy,
is
this feels warm.
Are you
I guess
hydrated?
because it's work, but
Well, it's work, yeah.
yeah, we
I mean,
don't
people
need to
wear
be dressed.
sweatshirt, yeah.
I can't even understand people who are wearing suits
No,
in
well,
this
that's-
kind of
that's-
climate.
yeah,
Well, you got to
that's-
dress to
that's-
impress, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's so silly.
Well, I don't know why they think that in this day and age,
The suit.
in the equator that we live in,
Yeah.
which is global now, that you would need to wear a suit to. And this is what people told me.
To look
if I go into a job to sell something or to present something, they would think less of me if a guy came in with a suit. No, I'm thinking like, why are you sweating?
No, but I do understand that point though, because there are individuals who would still look at that person and be like, oh, how you come up in here looking for a job or looking for this and not dressed appropriately?
I think
We
you
need
could
to change our expectations. It's
But don't you
not,
think you can dress appropriately without having a suit? So, for instance, why does this sound like this? The whole of the, in my ear it sounds weird. The whole of the, no, it sounds nothing. Okay, I got it now. What was that? Because you had a Q on? Or something? Okay. The whole of the Caribbean does not wear those suits. They don't feel off-put.
No, some people in Caribbean wear
Yeah,
suits.
but most of them wear the bush
they-
jack thing.
Yeah, but you go into certain banks in the Caribbean and they're wearing suits as
Yeah,
well. It's
right.
not we're not the only ones.
Yeah, but what I'm saying
It's
is,
just silly, though.
if you come to work scrubby and in a that's one thing. But if you go properly attired, I mean, do you think I'm underdressed?
No.
no, you look good.
So I'm saying if you go to a place of business, I deliberately put on the cufflinks and all that because I wanted to look professional, right? But to wear a suit, what kind? Everyone, I tell you, what looks unprofessional when you got the big sweat bowl on the arm,
The sweat stain.
Yeah.
the big little circular. Mm-hmm. That looks.
Every time I see, I used to be a suit person, and this is when I was practicing as a reporter, going out in the field. I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I? I don't have one suit anymore.
Now, I'll tell you, I'm glad you brought that up since we're always on these cases. You know what I don't like to see, and I don't know why they feel they can do it, but they do, is if you're, I would like to say, support staff scenario. So let's just say you're a reporter, you're a photographer, whatever. In other words, you come to an event. The event is not, you're not covering the event, right? There's a lot of people, I think, are kind of inappropriately dressed for these events.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So you'll have something where you have people in, decent, I don't want to, let me use that, certain attire. Let's say, appropriate attire. And then you have someone like a T-shirt taking the photograph and it just seems.
Yeah, I do agree with that because I feel like even if you're taking the photos, there's a way to look professional. Even if you have, and
just
this
a button-down shirt with a pair of pants on. Yeah,
absolutely, or the monogrammed shirt. Something with the company logo or something.
But not like just.
Look,
I don't really
roll
care.
out of bed
and
and
And there's a lot of people
I've seen journalists too who look a hot mess.
Yeah, they just
going out
it's
on
like, well, this is what
assignment.
I can do. This is what I can do, because I don't, I don't know what it is. It's a.
I don't like it though. I think you should always look presentable.
And again, it's presentable, and well, I guess we're judging, and I wouldn't want to judge about because someone, but I think it's because they feel that there's not. I think it's because they feel that they're not vested in this. they're not getting anything out of this.
Well, I don't know.
But then that's how they're thought of. And then, by the way, then they want to know why they're thought of or treated in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you look at the United States, for instance, reporters, et cetera, not all, but some, they got on some suit or a shirt or something.
It depends on what their, the newspaper writers tend to dress a little differently. They might have a button-down shirt with jeans and some loafers or something like that, and that's still properly attired,
Right.
But I don't want to see no holes in your shirt. I can't go on my job looking like that.
Holes in the shirt.
Yeah, I saw a reporter with holes in the shirt going on assignment, taking pictures of the prime minister. Come on now.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you mean a photojournalist. So anyway, that's but the heat is. So I don't know if we're still into the denying of global warming. Are we still in that?
Yeah. Fake news.
Yeah, that's. I mean, how do you deny? So you have a map.
Deny science.
Yeah, no. So you have a map, right? And the map says 1970. Okay. And you see the global, what do you call it? The polar cap.
Sure.
And it covers like 12 feet. Okay? Let's just say 12 feet. I'm trying to break it down for the people.
Then it's
12 feet. And then you have a show of 2018. It's 4.5 feet.
No, fake news.
Someone doctored that. And then there are pictures of like the ice falling,
Yeah.
And the polar bear on the one little circle.
On the one little piece. I know.
I don't know how you deny it. And then this is what I like. And then when you have a bad winter, see?
Yeah.
How is it global warming with this cold?
That's cool. The cold will cancel out the heat, and then just make everything normal.
So your boy is up in NATO now. And I saw a little bit on Morning Joe, because even Morning Joe is to the point of total disgust to him, right?
I know. Wasn't that his boy at one point?
It was.
Oh, my God.
And here's a guy, and while Trump is talking to NATO or doing a press conference, and he's talking about how NATO this and the arm and that, Scarborough is going, that's a lie. That's a lie. Yeah, that too is a lie. It's all a lie.
It's funny how he just changed Joe, that is, after the attacks on Mika. I feel like,
that's his,
that's what it took.
That's his gal. That's his thing.
Are they married yet?
I don't know. I don't know their thing.
You don't follow them? You watch them every day?
No. Most days I see like tidbits.
You want to ask him?
No, I'm not like,
You want in the circle?
No.
Hey.
See, like Jerome, I could call Jerome.
You could call Jerome.
Yeah, but I can't call Joe.
Jerome, by the way, said he was waiting for me to come on the stage.
Yeah.
Jerome said, like, foolishness here?
Because he wanted to cover up the cheating. See, if you'd come on the stage, then it would have not looked bad.
It's so funny.
But it looked very bad.
That's my boy. No.
So we have the statue again, the icon thing.
It's so pretty.
Yeah, it's so good. It seems to be getting bigger. I don't know why. You trade that in for a bigger one.
So
that was probably the first one we had, was just like the one they give you to carry home before they engrave.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're right.
Okay, and that one was plastic too. This one is metal.
Yeah.
But anyway, and not only that, I think this is the one Jerome gave you. Yeah. So now the hot topic about town. Well, not the hot topic, because the hot topic. See, this is the other thing. So the hot topic is what they make it the hot topic.
No.
Right. In other words, had that not appeared, just asking.
As a headline?
As a headline.
I still would have.
No, we may have, but I don't know if it would have been the thing. Someone brought it up. Well, the PLP.
I still would have.
So the topic is Sir Roland Simonet, who, by the way, I will make you a ton of bet. Now, this is the other thing I wanted to ask you, Rogan Smith. You think a lot of people who are talking about it have any clue
of who Sir Roland is,
or what actually went down, as opposed to what they hear someone tell them?
And I was having the conversation today too, even like with Sir Stafford Sands, when people would say, he's a racist. I would say, why?
Because he's white.
And they say, huh? And then so he counters, huh? They don't know. They just kind of follow what everybody else says.
This is what I have learned about the time. And, our guest this afternoon is Lynn Holowesko. It'll be interesting to see what she says, because one of the things that you'll learn, because, I've spoken with Lynn a couple of times, is, for instance, she lived right here on Market Street downtown. So, it'll be an interesting thing, because that whole era would have been right central, right? And by the way, they lived in the building that
our building, on Shirley Street.
This is what is interesting to me. And I've come to understand this, and I'm going to acquaint it, and I don't want anyone to be offended, but I'm going to acquaint it with. You saw the issue that happened on Rose Island.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought about you.
And so a lot of people
Boy.
start to associate behaviors.
And we're talking about. I like to say what we're talking about because there's some. See, exactly. And he always assumes everybody knows.
You don't know.
I'm assuming that if you know, everyone knows.
No,
okay.
no.
So now I know nothing, but you know
you
no one else knows.
You have to say what people. There was an incident
we
on.
We gotta
take a break. Okay.
So we'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll talk about the incident.
See, I'm glad he's here.
Yeah. Because I had the video too, so I don't know. I couldn't tell too much on the video. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith, and our guest host is Nick Liebman.
What do they call him? Lieberman?
Lieberman. And we have Nick One.
Nick Liebman.
Who's on our board.
Dominic.
We keep on trying to come up with a name for Nick, you know.
Which Nick?
Nick on the board. I think I'm going to go with Nick One.
Yeah, or just the OG.
Nick One.
Yeah.
I don't know the OG and all that. That ain't my kind of speak. Now, so what we're talking about is, and I want to acquaint this because this is why I think we haven't gotten past this. And we talked about this before from this perspective of tribalism, okay? That race has always been a problem globally. No matter if you were the Gauls, you know, in the Roman days, it's the Gauls. And the Romans, it's always about your tribe.
Yeah.
Okay?
Us against them.
It's always us against them. And when you see certain behaviors, okay, these behaviors people try to associate with a certain thing. So what happened? Tell us what happened with.
So on the Independence Day holiday, a man was stabbed on Rose Island. And they said after he was stabbed, some men hopped on their jet skis and left.
Right.
And so that's the generic information.
Right.
Yes.
And of course. They say, you know, they get. I've heard all the terminology that they acquaint with people, and it's about the black and the this and the youth and all that. And I say to people, listen, and this goes back to how we kind of classified things in the past, like with Sir Roland and others, that this is always about socioeconomic. Okay, you see certain behaviors. Okay, this is generic. More globally, for instance, well, let's take one. Let's go with litter. Let's just go with litter. Whether it's Westwood Villas or Lyford Key, okay, as you go down the scale, you see more litter. This is just the reality, okay? Because as Simeon Hall said, what did he say? You know, if you're trying to survive, you ain't worrying about the beer bottle on the ground. You know, you got to get people. You got to get people engaged.
And as you go down the ladder to, you see more tolerance of litter.
More tolerance,
there's intolerance at certain
levels, right?
Yeah, certain levels. Yeah.
And you may have even people who pick the litter up for you,
like
at certain levels, right? Like, so what I'm saying is, you know, there's certain, and then there's the education void. So you have some capacity to communicate and to be civil, maybe at a different level. Okay, because we talked about civility, and you have an inability maybe to communicate or articulate without the same sort of civility at different levels.
Yeah.
Again, not broad brushing, but you see the.
Yeah.
It's listen,
there.
You know, people say, you know, there's
this
word called stereotype, and I don't know why they invented that word because it's a stupid word.
Stereotypes are true.
Because why would they be able to stereotype
if there was some commonality and you didn't see it happening?
You know, if they say to me, well, you know, if you're from Appalachia, you don't have any teeth. Well, they said that. They came up with that because a lot of people don't have the money to go to the dentist and their teeth are falling out. It's not a thing.
But it doesn't mean that everybody who's from there
doesn't mean everything.
It's when you say everybody.
You can't say everything.
Yeah, you can't assume that.
You can't assume.
Put it this way.
Precisely.
Let's reverse it. So if you're from Britain and you're dealing with the aristocracy, right? The fact that all the aristocracy talk in this sort of manner, I'm sure there's at least one or two who don't. But the reality is, them brothers talking like that. So, you know what I'm saying? So you can say, okay, that's a stereotype, but they're talking like that, aren't they? Don't stereotype me. Okay?
Yeah.
So now if you go down by Bubba and there, Bubba said, listen, boy, Okay?
Oh, okay.
You know, so Bubba, you didn't hear yourself saying, so listen more. You didn't hear yourself say that? So we get all caught up because, you know what? One group doesn't like the other group calling them something or classifying them as something. And so, you know, I'm just hoping that we learn from these things, but we will get away. We will solve these problems more if we get away with just purely the stereotype and try to understand the basis for these behaviors.
Well, let me ask you, because we were talking about this
Sir
earlier,
Roland, yeah.
Sir Roland. What were your thoughts about him being named a national hero?
Look, first of all, I don't even know who's on the committee of who decides this. I assume that it's hopefully a balance of you know, nonpartisan. That's the word we want to use. I don't know who appoints the committee. I don't know when it's appointed, but I'm hoping that it's balanced. Because here's why I think it's balanced. Because if it was completely unbalanced, okay, then maybe Sir Lyndon and Samila wouldn't have gotten it. I don't know.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the reality is, I look at the thing, I see Sir Roland Simonet and Cecil Wallace Whitfield, Milo Butler and Sir Lyndon Pinley. Now, if it was all F&M, there's a lot of people who are in the F&M who don't really want anything to do with Sir Lyndon Pinley.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I've got to figure it's balanced, and I'm thinking in my mind, and I don't know the makeup, that going back to Simeon Hall's views on things, that maybe these 4 or 5 or 6 or 18 people who are on the selection committee are above the fray and selected on the merits of what they thought people who deserved this award, you know, what the requirements were, and did these people meet the requirements. Now, we have a lot of history and a lot of misconstrued history or you know, mythical history, you know. So I don't know. And by the way, I'm a child of 1958, and I have no clue about Sir Roland and what he did and what he didn't do. Zero. So I don't know about you.
No,
Do you know anything about Sir Roland and his what he
His
did and didn't
contributions?
do? Yeah.
Not beyond the extent of his ties with Sir Stafford Sands and their contribution to tourism. You know, Stafford Sands was always credited with, you know, our model of
non-seasonal
tourism. You
right.
know,
And more so even the financial sector as well. Not more so, but equally. Yeah.
And so Sir Roland Simonet's name always gets tied up in that. But beyond that, I don't know of the great contributions that he made. And that's not to say he didn't make them.
Right.
It's just I'm not aware.
By the way, if you recall, we had this controversy similarly when we had Sir Stafford Sands on the $10 bill. Okay? I am not, I'm going to be honest with you, and this is a lack, and this shows our lack of, we always talk about it, our lack of historical knowledge. I don't know, really, because, I mean, you can look it up. We're going to look it up.
No.
So Roland Simonet, how long, for instance, he was premier? And I want to say it was a relatively short period of time, because it was a time between Sir Stafford Sands not being it, and then Sir Lyndon Pinley taking over in premier. I want to say it was like 3 to 4 years. I'm not sure. He was the first premier, Bahamian.
Yes.
Premier.
That's what
Well, actually, I don't think Sir Stafford was ever premier, because I don't think. They had to do something They had to do something. I forget how it was. It was just how you got to be. Anyway, I don't even know that stuff, and that's sad. It's like someone not knowing who the second president of the United States was, or something like that. Does anyone know?
Oh,
he was the first premier. He was the first premier of the Bahamas.
Stafford was, yeah.
Was it Jefferson?
Jefferson. But Stafford
Not
was
Stafford.
Bahamian.
Same. Sir Roland Simonet
was the first premier.
Yes.
So what was Sir Stafford? Because he was the big honcho. See, it was how the thing was structured from a colony to this or that. You see what I'm saying? There was some reason why, like Sir Stafford, I think, was head of what they called the Legislative Council or something like that.
He's a former finance minister.
So he was not even premier, but he had control. I think he was also in. 2 minutes.
And
Lynn will tell us.
And he was the lawyer for Wallace Groves.
The former president of the Senate will give us the full picture. I can assure you that.
So he helped create the Bahamas' tourism industry and is credited with being an architect of Bahamian post-war prosperity. That's why he was dubbed the father of tourism in the Bahamas. He had a prominent role in the UBP.
Yeah. It's funny because everyone always thinks that he was like the head honcho. And
I don't know anybody who thought that.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll get the information, because there was a time when the way that our country was structured. You had this legislative council and this and that kind of thing. So we'll get more information on that. Our guest this afternoon is going to be Lynn Holowesko. And by the way, I'm seeing something here that I know is wrong. It said Roland Theodore Simonet, Prime Minister of the Bahamas. He was never Prime Minister because you have to be an independent to be Prime Minister. Lynn Holowesko, who is former President of the Bahamas Senate, will be our guest. And it'll be interesting because this came out to hear her perspective on it. I also want to hear her perspective on just those times. And then there's also some ease of doing business, general terms we're going to talk about. But it'll be an interesting show, very interesting show, because we don't often get these perspectives. And we've had Michael Lightbourne, we've had Sir Arthur.
I think Mr. Lightbourne needs to come back on, too.
Yeah, we had Sir Arthur on, and all the folks from that era. And a lot of them are unfortunately disappearing. Yeah. There's one guy, I'm not going to call his name, I'm going to tell you his name after, who I'd like to...
come back when we come back from the break.
I'd like to find out his perspective, but I think he might be uncontrollable, so I don't know if I can deal with it. But we'll talk. We'll be back after this.
Someone's in there?
Yeah, that's...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here, along with Rogan Smith, Nick Lieberman from where are you from?
What do you mean?
He was born
here. Yeah.
He's born
here, but live in Oregon now, though.
Did you ever have a Bahamian dialect?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. What time? How old were you when you left here?
I must have been 8.
Yeah, you gotta pick up something then.
Yeah, you
but you could probably understand.
No, thanks.
You could probably.
Say it. Come on.
Say what?
Boy.
Say boy.
Boy? What?
No, boy.
What?
Say boy.
Boy?
Boy.
Just say boy.
Boyd?
Yeah,
boy.
yeah.
Boyd?
Boy, not bird.
Boy.
Boy?
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Yeah. No, you
gotta work on
you
that.
ain't gonna make it, man. You
Yeah.
gotta get it together.
It's all good.
Practice that word. Practice that word, because if you can't say boy, because Omar can say it for the while.
He can't even say it. I thought he did say that.
But so how you had a good week? You enjoyed the show?
Yeah, of course. It's, like I said, it's 10 out of 10 being here all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, this nut job over here, I won't allow her to leave the show because, as much as she detests me, it works, and we don't, I don't care what people talk about planning and all that. There's a certain fluidness to not having a kind of, you can tell when you're listening to radio shows in the States, those morning shows, you can tell every second is planned. I mean, there's some ad lib based on feedback from guests and all that, feed off the guests and all that, but they got producers. We don't have that.
We got a producer.
Who we got? No, he's not a producer. We don't have a person who produces like content and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No one
he's
tells
a technical
you what to say.
producer. Well, no.
Nobody can tell him what to say.
Well, one time someone tried to do that, and they said they had a template for us. And so I said, what's a template?
Your old show,
yeah, what's a template? And they said, well, we're going to have this. So one day, I said we can't go with that. So one day, anyway, they ended up being the co-host. And they were actually the boss at the time. And they said, here's what's going to happen. We're going to call into the Gold's Gym. And we're going to, go along with that, and we're going to talk about how we're going to join the Gold's Gym, and how we're going to,
be a part.
Yeah, and how we're going to,
that just takes away from it.
So he comes, and I didn't say anything. So he comes on the air, he comes on the air, and he goes, hey, and then he had one of those kind of voice too. Hey, this is Scrap, and we're going to go on the Gold's Gym, and then the whole thing. And then he says, so Ed, we're going to join Gold's Gym, correct? No.
He's so disgusted.
Okay, I just said no. And then he said, well, and it's going to be anything. No.
You are so...
And so what do you think about that, Ed? What are you going to say? I don't know.
Why do you do that?
He never came on again.
Because you because
that was... First of all, he was... Let me tell you what he did. And I know this sounds egotistical.
I would not do it.
But let me tell you what he
air.
did. Let me tell you what he did, and I want to know what you think about this. And all of us have egos, okay? But let me tell you what he did. So Eric and it was Eric and Ed show. Eric and Ed, okay? And he then he's only filling in. He was only filling in one day.
He's the boss, though.
Well, he was filling in. He's the boss to be the boss, but not to fill in. It's like having Lawrence O'Donnell's show and someone fills in who's his boss. They don't call it the boss's show. Yeah. Okay, no, they don't. They say it's a Lawrence McDonald show, and Rogan Smith is sitting in.
Or special guest.
Okay? He did a whole promo. It's a Scrap and Ed show.
Oh, you lie.
Yeah, no, I'm not lying. Why would I make that up? The Scrap and Ed. Okay? And I just thought that was extremely disrespectful. So I just said, fine. If that's how, it could be his show. So I just, it didn't take long.
Because you're so salty.
Yeah. Well, I just think that we all have, feelings and personalities and all that.
But I know if I was going to do that to him.
No. Well, I just said I participated. I said no. I could have just said nothing.
Participation.
Yeah.
I could have said zero.
So you went a step above.
He asked a question, and I answered.
But didn't y'all go over the plan to say what y'all were going to say?
First of all, he didn't even consult with me, which I think is only fair, prior to the show about what his plan was. I come into the show that morning, and he presents to me.
This is how it's going to go down.
Yeah. So, fine. No problem. No. I'm not going to the gym.
Okay.
But I didn't say I'm not going to the gym. I just said no.
You probably should have said that part.
Yeah.
I'm not going to the gym.
Yeah. You didn't stink.
Yeah, I don't agree with this.
Oh, I was being very firm. Anyway, we're going to take a break. We're going to bring in our guest, Lynn Holowesko, the former president of the Bahamas Senate, and a lot of other things. She was also the ambassador for BEST. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
I think she was the first BEST ambassador. I want to know what makes you, what determines a job is an ambassador job. Like, can you be the ambassador for BAIC? I don't know.
Maybe you could.
I don't know. We'll be right back.
Next.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith, and who's our co-host, and we got Nick Lieben sitting on the side there. Nick is on the board. And our guest is the former ambassador for the environment and creator of BEST, but doubling in as ambassador for BEST. The former president of the Bahamas Senate. Now, you get to be honorable for that for life, correct?
No.
You don't? You're not Senator the Honorable Lynn Simonet? I mean, Holowesko. You don't get to be honorable once you're the president of the Senate. I think you're honorable for, you have that title.
Oh,
I'm not saying you're honorable.
Thank you.
But you have the title, right?
Well, thank you for giving me that title.
But do you get it? I don't know.
No one has advised me of that.
Okay. Because I know if you're a cabinet minister, you get to be.
But 2
Yeah,
terms
Richard
in
check in.
cabinet,
I think you're honorable for life, Lynn. I think that's what the deal is on that.
I know for the cabinet.
And especially if you were ambassador, you get to be your excellency for life, right?
In the United States.
Okay, but here you don't. So, like, if someone was an ambassador to Washington D.C., they don't get to be your excellency.
Not for life, no.
Oh.
I think we're a little too hung up, generally speaking, on titles in our country.
I agree 1,000%.
Yep.
Which is surprising that you're not these, people aren't those things because they like the titles. Anyway, so there's a number of things we want to talk with Lynn Holowesko about. But first of all, how are you doing? How's life?
Well, everything's great. We've
Right.
just enjoyed our 45th year of independence, and I think we've still got some work to do.
Got a lot to work to do. So the first thing I want to talk about is because a lot of people, there's this. I think we don't often talk to our folks who have been through a whole range of experiences in the Bahamas often enough, and I think as a result of that, Lynn, that people have a lot of, I don't want to use the word myth, but certainly misperceptions about people. They assume, Nancy Kelly, and I got to get Nancy on the show, told me about how when she and her husband came back and lived in an apartment. Nancy Kelly. Yeah, Nancy Kelly from Kelly's.
Yeah.
So people have this perception that where people are today, they always were. There's this kind of, and it doesn't matter what race you are. People have that perception of people. They do. Now, tell us just a little bit, because I thought it was very interesting when I heard about where you came from, about where you lived when you were growing up.
I started on Augusta Street, where my grandfather and grandmother.
See, I didn't even know that piece. You just know when you're throwing at me now.
Well, that was tiny. I was little tiny.
Okay.
My grandmother and grandfather had a house there, Jerome Pyfram and Ellen Pyfram.
Uh-huh.
He had lived in Governor's Harbor most of his life, but then decided to start moving the family more towards Nassau.
Are you an adventurer?
Absolutely.
She's a Lutheran adventurer. Have we ever met in
Before
Lutheran?
then.
Before he was a pirate. He was a pirate.
Yeah, there you got it.
Okay. All right. So Augusta Street, and then you
Augusta
moved.
Street, yes. And I caught my first fish when I was about 3 with a thread and a little bent pin, and it was only about 3 inches long. I'm ashamed to think that I even brought it. But I took it to my grandfather. He was very proud of me.
I guess they call it a pilcher.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Market Street.
Okay.
No, before that I moved to Queen Street.
Okay.
My parents had the little tiny house right at the bottom of the steps on the eastern side that is still there.
Yeah.
And we lived there until I was 7. And then we moved to Market Street. And our house was the house which faces Trinity Place. It's just north of Balcony House.
Okay.
Is
that veranda house?
Veranda house,
Okay,
exactly. I didn't know that people knew it by that
The
name.
Central Bank owns that now, right?
That's correct.
Right. So, I think that, and what did your father do? I forgot. I know it was something with straw work.
Well, now you're going to ask me something that has a long answer, and I don't know if you want that.
We got a lot of time, man.
It was wartime when my father and mother met in the 1929 hurricane when they were both working at the Montague Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And things got really tough after that, and, the war came on in Europe, and there was no tourism.
This is the First World War.
Just
we got to tell the historical, context.
Okay,
you only
Second
won then.
World War.
Yeah. Okay. So you had the war.
So anyhow, they moved to the United States because there was no work here, and they were there for a couple of years, and then came back. And my father, just to get some food on the table, decided to import fruit, and he set up a fruit stand right in front of the British Colonial Hotel across the street, and sold fresh fruit during the winter season. And during the regular season, he would get on his bicycle, which had a basket on the front, and deliver fresh fruit to Bahamian residents. You're looking at me like this is. In those days, we had a man coming around on his bicycle, a different man. He had a box on the front of his bicycle, and it had ice in it, and it had fresh fish.
Yeah, but I even remember the fish. You remember that, Rogan?
No.
I remember the fish man, ripe tomatoes, green peas.
No.
That's right. That's right.
I remember.
Fish, man.
You don't remember? Yeah, I'm old. I'm telling you. Listen, when I was growing up, believe it or not, I don't even remember fruit, to be honest with you. But I remember that getting a tomato to eat like an apple was a big thing.
What is a fruit?
Do you recall that?
Well, the house that we had on Market Street had the whole inside of the block, so we had property, nothing in it, between Market and George Street.
Okay.
And my father couldn't resist the temptation, being the son of a farmer. He grew everything practically that we could possibly eat. I mean, it was amazing. Yeah. But my mother wanted to do something, and she saw some ladies plaiting straw and making a few handbags, and she thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if they decorated the handbags? And so she, and any elderly straw woman who might be listening to me knows this is a fact, she actually taught them how to decorate straw work with raffia and shells.
You remember
that?
Yes,
of course.
Well, you would have known, and I don't know if you knew this, but your mother would have known Bertha Brown.
I didn't know her, but my mother would have.
Yeah. And she was Tommy Turnquist's grandmother, who had the number one position on the straw market. It goes way back. So,
And Toledo Strawn's mother as well.
I only knew Toledo Strawn. You say her mother was involved in that as well.
Yes, but Toledo was. She came into my law office one day when I was still on Bay Street and said, I just want to tell you that you really ought to be proud of your mother because she taught us all how to do this. And anyhow, so what happened then was the Red Cross used to have a fair up in what was called the Silk Farm, which is now the East
Harbor Bay. No, I'm pointing
Harbor Bay.
That's where our
we're
office
talking
is.
about the mulberry.
Oh yeah.
Bush. Remember that?
Who was here when we were having that conversation?
I want to think. I don't know if it was Pericles, but that's who told me. But it was someone else we had recently who
brought that up.
Maybe Michael actually. I don't know. But the silk farm.
So they used to, Red Cross had a fair up there, and my mother went and my father, and they put all the straw, the most beautiful parts of the straw work that they could have found, could have gotten together. And they had this display at the Red Cross Fair. And the Duke came along with a friend of his who was from New York, who happened...
Now when you say the Duke, you're talking about my man
the
Edward?
Duke of Windsor, yes. The Duke of Windsor. And he had a friend with him who was from Macy's. I think he was one of the owner, if not the owner of Macy's. And the straw work was so beautiful. The owner told my parents, as many of these items as you can make and ship to us, we'll buy every one of them. So Daddy went and got a boat over to Florida and bought a whole bunch of hand cranked and foot cranked sewing machines and built some long tables. And you know where it was? It was behind where John Bull is now. There used to be an empty part of a parking lot that belonged to the church.
Yes.
And all the ladies were in there under a shed. I could tell you that was one of the happiest memories I have. Sitting on the wall, listening to them singing their old songs. They would do it, with the cry and call, or what do we call it? Somebody cries out and everybody else answers. Oh, it was just gorgeous to listen to. And then making all these gorgeous things, hats, straw bags.
I remember seeing a picture of this factory in the cabinet office. So
it's still there.
But all right, so that took you into what did you do before? What did you do before law? Were you?
I did children.
That was
serious.
The children,
I'm serious. I had 7 children, and I didn't work until
I didn't know she had 7 children.
I brought them up myself, and so I wasn't going to work until they were all in school until 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
And then I thought
that's a full-time job.
7 children.
Several full-time jobs. That's a lot.
And then you went into the law.
Then I did the law.
Yes. And that was, did you article or did you go over to?
I did articles.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Now, the thing that how Lynn and I got to meet each other really in earnest was through the Downtown NASA Partnership. We've met before that, but I'm talking about in big earnest. I went to school with the kids and all that stuff, so we've known each other for a while there. But the big thing, because we're going to talk about, but Lynn, I know you don't want to talk, but I want to ask you this question because unfortunately, we don't have perspective in this country. And that's not because we don't want to have perspective. It's because we just weren't there and we have done it. And this leads into a little bit of what we're talking about downtown. We've done an horrific job, I think, of recording our history, good or bad. I mean, the one thing you admire about the United States is no matter how bad it is, they've got it recorded.
Yes.
No matter how good it is, they have it recorded.
Yes.
I found out from Jerome Sawyer the other day that all of the archives up at ZNS were in a shed somewhere and got rained on. They were sitting on the ground, got rained on by an hurricane.
Oh, no.
And destroyed. Now, I don't know how much, I'm maybe oversimplifying.
Lost,
but the fact is, we even thought
that's
about
horrific,
it.
Though.
To just put them in a shed in the thing, they should be in some air conditioned.
Archiving our history.
When my husband first came, we moved back to Nassau because we got married in 55 and left, and then came back in 60. And when he came here, he went to look for some records in the Supreme Court. And they told him they were upstairs in the attic, and he went up in the attic. They were piled all over the floor.
Yeah.
All kinds of roaches and things running around.
Yeah.
What is it? Just what is it? Because obviously that had been going on for a while, and it's surprising because we were a colony, and I don't know when this started. If it was always the case of how we kept records, but what caused that to just like not value that?
I cannot answer that question. I've just referred to the time when my husband, that we got married in 1955. When he first came here, a year before then, we would go over, he wanted to see the whole island. We'd go all around looking at different streets where I knew different people, And he couldn't get over the fact that the tiniest little houses wherever we went were spotless and clean, and he made the comment, you could eat off the floor in these houses. And the yards were swept in those days.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about sleeping with the coconut frond.
That's right.
Because you didn't have any St. Augustine grass. Okay? I don't know anyone who had any you had St. Augustine grass?
No, sir.
Okay. So you used the thing? The thing. And you could have seen the what do you call it? The scrape marks in the dirt.
And when you wanted to plant some new grass somewhere, you had to yuck up some of the grass that was already there and plant it somewhere else.
Okay, otherwise she's official. Get yuck. Okay. All right. So the perspective I want to ask is this. We see all this, and we're not going to get deep into this because I want to talk about downtown, but we see the perspective of Sir Roland Simonet, who was honored, and I said, I don't know who makes up that committee, but obviously it seems to be a fairly balanced committee because people from all political sides were nominated. What is this visceral reaction? Can you equate?
You should ask her what her reaction is.
Yeah, what is your reaction to the reaction?
Yeah, it's kind of loaded. It's kind of a loaded question.
Yeah, but what is your reaction to the whole reaction?
To the announcement that he's
yeah.
Well, you're asking maybe the wrong person because I was just thinking how sad it was when I was in my office this afternoon that in order to erase unhappy memories of the past, we have decided to inflict those same kinds of conditions on people of the present. So there is no question in my mind that black people were not treated as they should have been up until the 60s. It was wrong, and, why blame people today for what happened then? And why even judge what happened then by today's standards? Because it doesn't work that way. I mean, wrong is wrong, and it was wrong. But, there were too many places around the world where it was not understood as something wrong. And as far as slavery is concerned, there were white slaves, there were red slaves, there were black slaves. Slavery was throughout our history, throughout the world's history. So, this is a different topic, and we shouldn't go down this path because we could do this properly some other time. But my reaction is that people have got to remember the good that Sir Roland did, and he did a lot of good. I've had so many people when I've been out campaigning through the years tell me how he helped them to do this or that, whether it was to put their children in school or to lend them money to build their first home or whatever it was. He did a lot of good.
Yeah.
And is there a reason other than the fact that he was white that he shouldn't have been honored?
Yeah, the funny thing about it goes back to this issue of history again. The thing that I dismiss immediately is, and Rogan and I were talking about it, is when you have that conversation, that's why it's so valuable then, and I'm saying no matter what perspective or what angle or side you come from, the reality is you have perspective. There's so many people who are engaged in this conversation who don't even know the name Sir Roland Simonet. But because of this partisan world that we live in, it's happening in the U.S. and other places, which history gets all garbled, where people you get snippets and you get people just feeding you this stuff, and because you happen to be a one political leaning, you buy into this. If you're another political beat, you buy into that. It's not progressive. It certainly doesn't take us to the next place, right?
Well,
like you said, it's regressive.
Right, but I think it's unfortunate that people have been brought up to think in a certain way about other people. Fortunately, I was brought up. I think my father's favorite friends were the fishermen down on Prince George Wharf, which is Woods Rogers. And we would go down there on a Friday afternoon because the siren went off at 12 o'clock and all the stores shut down.
I understand they shut down Saturday. This is the history. We'll talk about that. Saturday and Friday. Someone told me Friday and Saturday half day.
No.
Just Friday?
No, just Friday.
Okay. So I'll have to correct them now.
School got out on Fridays at 12 noon.
Yeah, I'm sure the kids would like
Anyhow,
that.
we would go down to Woods Rogers Walk, and Daddy and I, some of the boys, would sit on the edge of the dock and talk to all the guys in the boats and buy stuff from them. And my mother was a Catholic. She was part of a Catholic reading group, a Bible study group. And all the members of the group came to our house when it was her turn to have everybody over and serve brownies and whatever. So, I grew up on Market Street, and my neighbors across the street were Marcus Bethel and his family, and I just had a different kind of a start in life.
I was just going to say, why the thoughts are allowed to persist, Edward, is because we just never get the balance. So we hear from one side the negatives associated with Sir Roland Simonette, and when the opportunity comes from the other side to sort of clear it up or to say this is the good that he's done, like I heard today what you're saying about him helping Bahamians, and of course the chairman of the F&M outlined a lot of the good that Sir Roland did, but you don't hear that often, and so it's skewed. We don't do a good job.
We don't see, and I know Lynn is going to maybe. I hope she doesn't take offense to this because I'm not trying to age her, but unfortunately, the people who we could call on to give perspective are few and far between,
and a lot of them are reluctant.
I'm reluctant because there's like a backlash scenario. Right. I don't think this lady has any kind of fair thing going on. She likes to tell me what to do. But and that's hard, right?
That's good.
But the reality is that this is very important to me, Lynn. I once went and sat with Charles W. Bethel on Bethel Estates. Right here on the corner of DeVoe Street.
You left out the F. Charles CWF.
It was a lot of people, a lot of names, okay? Because it was Jeffrey this and that one, and everyone had the two initials, right? And I sat and I went to talk to him about a business thing, totally unrelated, business thing. And I'm sitting in his office, and it's a little bigger than this room, maybe double this, and every single inch of the wall had an 8x10 photo, framed, and which you saw in those photos. The Duke, he's sitting around with Prince Edward, at a hunting lodge in Andros and the whole thing. And the history that he gave me, and I shared some of that with you before. All I could say to him was, please, we got to get this down. But we don't have it down. Yeah. Okay, I mean, so we have to. When you get here, we're going to pull some of that out of you. Anyway, we're going to talk about Downtown Nassau Partnership. Lynn has been associated with that group, as I have been. Well, she's been been there much longer than I have. How many years you think? You don't want to say?
No, I just
25, 30 years.
I guess so.
Quite a while.
I don't think about that way.
Yes, but the reason I'm saying is you've been dedicated to it. That's what I mean by the.
Well, I wrote Sir Clement Maynard a letter about what we needed to do to improve downtown Nassau when there wasn't a committee. So that's how long I've been concerned about downtown.
Right. The other thing, I'm going to throw this out there too. People often talk, and Rogan, I'd like to hear your view on this, about the role of white Bahamians in the Bahamas. And Lynn Holowesko, and I've known her this way, is one of those people who no one can say, people will say they're not involved. This lady's involved. And I imagine to your, there must be a lot of pushback and all sorts of things that come with that in this society. But she's been engaged.
You know what's crazy? There's a perspective that I don't know why people feel like white Bahamians should have greater involvement in the Bahamas than black Bahamians. Like, particularly if you have somebody of means, there's this natural expectation that you should do the heavy lifting, or I don't know if that makes sense to you.
I don't know. It's just a whole. There's something we're going to have a different show on that has to come about where that whole thing has to go away. It just has to happen. So now downtown, you lived on Market Street. I actually happen to live on Sands Road, which is where that is, right? By the hospital. Where all the roads are.
Yes.
Okay, and so downtown to me, and I imagine much more to you, was it. Everything. I don't know what you recall, but I recall every single thing about like the Stop and Shop. The other day was between Elizabeth Avenue and the next street. I guess that would have been Victoria. And the buildings, I didn't recognize them as the buildings they used to be, like the Stop and Shop. Okay, it just doesn't seem the same. But the Carousel, the BOAC building on the corner, which is now Safri Square, the first Kentucky Fried Chicken that came on the corner of Frederick Street, where Burger King used to be, where G.R. Sweeting's used to be. All of these things. This was the center of everything, and it's not now. And Lynn and I work together on the Downtown Nassau Partnership, and we're trying to get to this point. And I'll say, Lynn, I don't know. Tell me how you feel we're progressing, why we haven't progressed faster? What's your feel on this? Take a deep breath.
Yeah. We are progressing. We have to stop, and you and I can find the progress because we know that, the committee helped to put it there. But the average person who drives down from around the British Colonial and heads up Bay Street doesn't think that there's that much progress. And the reason is the first thing that hits you is the corner after you pass the British Colonial is the corner of George Street and Bay Street, where right away the buildings are unpainted, dirty, full of horrible signs. There's no signage control whatsoever. There used to be. You could have one sign for your store, and it had just only a certain size to it. So there's no pride. Listen, we like to talk about how proud we are of our country. We have changed the beach from the Esplanade to Junkanoo Beach. How can any of us be proud of what we see on Junkanoo Beach?
It's terrible.
It is awful. And when I was in the Senate, I kind of stepped off beyond my bounds a little bit and made a plea from the Senate president's chair to people, for God's sakes, if you can't afford paint, just get out some soap and water and let's clean this place up.
But it's interesting that you mentioned about pride, because the first thing we do, and this is one of the things that I've been dealing with, is everyone always, as default, goes to government. Okay? What's the government doing? Well, everything that you just mentioned, from the Hilton, at least from Navy Lion Road, to, and boy, I should ask her that question. I will later. You know what I want to ask, but the roads. But anyway, we'll get about that later. Because she will know. Now, okay? She will know.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, you can just give me the $20. Anyway, we're not going to drag into that. But from Navy Lion Road to East Street, because we got a different set of problems east of East Street. Those are all privately owned buildings. And to the extent that, say, the government is responsible for paving the road, striping the road, to the extent of all of those entities, by the way, are responsible by law of removing their own garbage because they're commercial entities. Okay? Yes, we're going to take a break. Yes, there needs to be some signage control. But there's no one stopping those folks from painting those buildings.
No, exactly.
So we'll be right back. We'll be right back in a second. All right. I'm here along with Nick 1, Nick 2, and Rogan Smith, and that's Nick 2, that's Nick 1, and Lynn Holowesko, who is known to all of us. And Lynn, we're going to have you back because I don't care what you say. First of all, there's no none of that situation here, what you just outlined. So you don't have to worry about that. And it is extremely important whether people agree with you or not. And by the way, you have one of those things too on your phone.
I know. I saw the minute you put it down.
It's got to be a female thing. Anyway,
my brother gave it to me.
Well, because he gave it to a female person. Does he have one?
Yes, he does.
Okay. Well, I got to. This is Jerome.
Yes.
I got to talk to him. Anyway. Okay. So it is extremely important, and you're probably one of the few people who will actually even do it. Okay, for this kind of conversation to happen. Because if someone's driving along, whether they have any kind of preconceived thoughts, et cetera, then, it makes them think. Because like Rogan said, then there's another side to the story.
Yeah.
It's important. It's big stuff important.
Both sides have to be presented.
You can't go anywhere unless you have both sides. But anyway, we're talking about downtown. Now, what is it that is stopping people who own these buildings, and then we're going to get to the government side because the government bears some responsibility as well, obviously, all successive government. What is stopping people from saying, I'm complaining about how downtown looks. I'm downtown. Why am I not keeping my property presentable?
I don't really have an answer. Possibly one of the answers is that we have not had, for one reason or another, we have not had the quality tourists that we used to have. And quality tourists came to Nassau looking for beautiful goods.
Mm-hmm.
And the tourists generally, very, very generally, who come off of the cruise ships are
They're not looking for
not
China?
looking for quality. They're not looking for, Mademoiselle used to have beautiful clothes.
You recall Mademoiselle?
Yes, I do.
There was a store, Jaeger or Jaeger, whichever country you're from, you pronounce it differently. High-end clothes that came from London to be sold on Bay Street downtown. And, there was Ambrosine's, a beautiful shop.
Well, except for
Sir Francis Peake.
Boneville Bones, I don't even know of a clothing store downtown. I mean, I'm sure there are.
Coles of Nassau.
Coles of Nassau.
This is something, let me tell you something good about the budget. Not too many people are concentrating on that. If you can bring clothing in, hopefully some of those stores selling junk will sell clothing.
Well, or that other people will take advantage in some of these places.
To try and answer your question, I think it's depressing and discouraging that you're dealing with a different income level of tourists who are not interested in nice things and. Mind you, it wouldn't be me because I don't. If this is my building is going to look. Yeah,
because
clean.
these people are getting. One of the things that our consultant said is that because the cruise ships continue to come and bring people, the real estate values did not realign. Mm-hmm. In other words, there's still high rent on Bay Street, relatively high rent. Mm-hmm. Is it because though? So do you all have a store called Pyfrum's? That's a different Pyfrum?
It's a cousin.
Okay. But there were stores where people who owned the store were in the store.
Listen, when my father died and I was helping my mother just before I studied law, we had 3 shops. The Carib shop, another one that I created called Xanadu.
I don't know where that was.
It was right next to where the Pipe of Peace used to be.
Pipe of Peace. Remember that? With the pipe?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, my God, I forgot.
I was Solomon's
in between
Mines.
Solomon's and the Pipe Mines.
Oh
but I was in my...
But you were in this... See, they were owner-operator. Now they're kind of absentee landlords. So I just think that the rental income going to, several siblings who are not even in the Bahamas, that's really the problem. I don't think... Because some of those stores are making money. That's why they went to T-shirts and jewelry, because that's what's making the money. But it's because, but I'm happy, listen, the sidewalks were redone. The benches and the garbage cans have been replaced. These are governmental or quasi-governmental responsibilities. Pompey Square was done. The refurbishment of Rawson Square was done. The Marlborough Square, which you see, the Scandalarius boys did a wonderful job with that thing. On Woods Rogers Wharf, your family with the Pirates Republic. Luca Carey. So people have, there were things happening. There are things happening, but they have to take, and I hope what you're saying is correct, that the retail opportunities now that open up with clothing, that the folks who live over the hill and who live close by will now have the opportunity to have offerings, because the reality is there's nothing for anyone to go downtown for. What are you going to go downtown for right now?
Food.
Or if you want to buy something like from a nice place like John Bull, or there's some high end, and I have to say this publicly. I've never said it publicly. I'm going to say it. I've got to take my hats off to Fred Hazelwood and his team, because they have stayed the course, and they have the Gucci's, the Ferragamos, the Coach. They have all of those stores downtown, kind of they're like oases of high end product.
Oh, and again, Rick, who actually is there day after day after, is in the store. Yes,
that's the thing. Yeah. They're in the store.
Yeah.
So we're hoping now, Lynn, and this is where I want to talk about government's role, and I want to see what you're thinking. There are some things that are required of government, but rather than get into the specifics of those, because I think they're kind of generalized to a whole lot of things, the process of government. The process of getting things done for Bahamians, for non-Bahamians, isn't that what's holding up a lot of this process?
As far as cleaning buildings and painting buildings, no.
For instance, we're actually seeing a lot of progress being made now, more so than we've seen in the past. But for instance, ordinances, for like signage ordinances, giving Bay Street autonomy, et cetera, et cetera. These are the things really that are necessary to make this thing work, aren't they?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so I'm very hopeful that the government of the day, especially, is very mindful of what is required. But, you know, and I know you didn't want to talk about this specifically, but even though the policy makers may have the desire and the intent, there's still this issue of the civil service. And it's a very touchy subject because we live in a small community, but we have to call a spade a spade. I mean, we've got a problem.
We sure do.
And I mean, I know you're heading the ease of doing business. Have you seen movement in terms of getting these processes more streamlined?
Not as much as I had hoped or thought that we would be able to accomplish in a year. It's frustrating. It really is. It's gotten to the point, you mentioned civil service, it's gotten to the point now where someone who is actually says hello to you and smiles and does what they should be doing, you say, wow, you must be having a good day, you know? I mean, it's really sad. It's terribly sad. We used to be so proud of the way we treated each other and looked after people. And, you know, that's almost gone. We really have to work on that.
I went to my desk the other day, and my job at Atlantis is involved with governmental affairs. It's probably 70% of what I do. And I literally went into my office one day, and I felt despair because a lot of what I needed to get accomplished was just, I mean, something that I think that if we were dealing with a different mindset or the private sector would take a day. But yet, you know, months and months later. So it's almost like I don't know if you get this feeling, it's almost like you're being driven off the edge. You don't have the level of spirit, you're optimistic all the time. But you know what I'm saying, right? Imagine you're just trying to get a simple task done.
Yeah.
And you can't get it done because there's this obstacle of someone signing a piece of paper or stamping something or recording something. Yeah, well, you know, we have to talk. I saw an interesting thing. I'm going to show this. I'm going to read this to you. I want you to know. I want to know what you think of it. It was so timely that I thought I'd read it on the air today. It's by Ayn Rand, who I'm not necessarily a fan of for some reasons, but you know, everyone has their sayings, right? And this is what they said. When you see that in order to produce, you need to obtain permission from men who produce nothing, when you see that money is flowing to those who deal, not in goods but in favors, when you see that men get richer by graft and by pull than by work, and your laws don't protect you against them, but protect them against you, when you see corruption being rewarded and honesty becoming a self-sacrifice, you may know that your society is doomed. Well, I mean, someone just sent me that today, just, you know, one of these circulars. But how descriptive is that?
You've taken my breath away. I mean, it's a terribly sad commentary, and I'm afraid it could have been written about the Bahamas.
And you know, I'm a very nationalistic person. I don't even like to hear. I don't like to. I know you are, and I don't like to hear no one talking bad about me or about us and all that kind of stuff. But just the fact that this one sentence alone, forget all the other stuff, because you know these things. But when you see that in order to produce, you need to obtain permission from men who produce nothing. That's the scary part to me, because when you look at the civil service is there really to provide us with services, to record things, to stamp things, to provide licenses. They're not making things, but yet people who want to make things, people who want to produce, people who want to start businesses, people who want to hire people, these are the people you have to go to and say,
oh my gosh,
listen, can I drive my car? Okay. You know?
But the thing about it is that the service used to be something that people would be proud of, and Bahamians used to be very proud of it. And I remember one of the sad things that happened around the time that we became independent was a statement was made, you no longer have to be servants.
So we this whole servitude versus service got confused.
Totally confused.
I'm compelled to say this. I didn't want to say this, but I'm going to say it. I dealt with an individual today who had a private concern and contacted me about wanting to get something fixed for his business. So fine, Again, what our mindset is, you have a problem, let's fix it. So we met this morning to fix it. When I get there, I see this guy. I don't think I'd met him before. And I see a government truck. It has red plates. So I'm thinking, well, this must be someone else. So I literally said, so you work for government? He said, yeah, I'm a consultant. I said, and you have a truck? And he said, yeah. I said, I'm thinking in my mind, but you're here now dealing with your private business on government time in a government vehicle. I don't even know how to deal with something like that. I feel the need to deal with that, right? Because this is now in your face stuff that's going on.
Let's leave that and go back to Bay Street a little bit.
To Bay Street.
And the buildings. You know what I think? I think some of those buildings on Bay Street have concessions from real property tax because of their age.
They do?
Well, they could.
Okay. Right.
If it's a historic building and it's
over 50 years, I think.
Yeah, whatever. I it's more than 50, but anyhow.
Okay.
You get a concession from real property tax, and I don't think there should be any concessions for any buildings that are not well kept. Furthermore,
I agree with that 100%.
If people are going to allow their buildings to become derelict, I think we need a law that
the government can take it.
Absolutely.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. That'll clean up Bay Street.
Absolutely. You're right.
This goes to the point we were talking about the other day, Rogan, Sue, and I said, we've got to get to this point in this country where we need, and she didn't like the word I used, but I wasn't using it in the sense like, flogging, but we've got to have some hardcore, real stiff measures that if you don't wish to be hurt by those measures, then do the right thing.
Exactly.
You tell people, hey, your property tax would normally be $10,000 because of the concession, and without the concession it's going to be 35 or 40. Well, if you don't paint your building, it's 35. Well, how much paint costs compared to the 35,000? If you're going to keep a derelict building, we take your building.
Would it be a difficult process for the government to create that legislation to sort of take those buildings? Would it be difficult?
Well, any law is difficult to a certain extent, but you're saying is there a reason why it couldn't happen?
Yes.
No.
It has to just be will, correct?
Yes.
I was just going to say, what's stopping us from doing that?
Well, you have a great deal of influence, Honorable Ambassador or Senator. And I'm saying, no, but this is what has to happen, Rogan. We cannot, it's like with the budget, okay? We knew a path we were going down. And we knew that no matter how, people could classify this as draconian in tenor because there's some hard choices that have to be made. But those choices have to be made. And I think Bahamians, to be honest with you, are somehow starting to buy into, we needed to do this. They don't like it. No one likes it, but this is what we need to do. Now, that's far more intrusive because you have to buy bread than painting your building and the consequence of not painting it. So make a choice. Do you paint your building or do you get it repossessed? Are these things that you could see the ease of doing business? Well, I guess that's more for the downtown to promote that. But do you see the government as open to these type of things?
I see them as open. I think they have priorities, which are not always our priorities. So when I say our, I mean
downtown,
us, downtown committee or ease of doing business, whatever it happens to be. Okay. We all have our priorities. Right. We're fortunate as far as ease of doing business is concerned that the Prime Minister has named that as one of his 6 categories of primary importance. But you mentioned the VAT, the 12%, and it's like giving a child all the candy they want as often as they ask for it, and then all of a sudden one day you say, okay, no more candy, give it back. Well, who's going to like that, But are we going to act like children and cry, I want my candy, or are we going to say, okay, maybe I have to do something good if I want to get candy again? As far as balancing the budget is concerned, I think in addition to the increase in taxes which we've had, we have to do more to increase the economy. We have to do more to assist Bahamians in starting businesses and in making their businesses thrive and be successful. And I don't see how you do one without the other. You can't just keep taxing people. You have to give them You have to give them
Absolutely.
a means of getting ahead in the country and being successful.
And what you have to do, and I'm going to end it on this note because we're at our 7 o'clock, is that you have to stop asking or hoping to ask permission from men and women who produce nothing, who stop people from producing. I mean, that's what it's all about with ease of doing business, correct? That in order for the economy to grow, in order for people to have businesses and open up businesses and come up with new ideas, etc., those who are supposed to just be giving you essentially, I don't want to say a rubber stamp, but there should be a process to say, I want to open up a business. That should just be something that's non-issue.
Right.
And then we will grow the economy. Lynn Holowesko, thank you. I mean, I'm going to have to ask you to come back at some point so we can get into the deep
Please
stuff.
do.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We'll lock the doors,
Thank you.
put the guards around, then we'll get, down and dirty.
If more people could only know what Bay Street used to be like and what the island used to be like, they would be more interested in making it beautiful again.
But and this is a whole another task for another show, but I know what Bahamians know. They know beauty.
They travel.
Okay, they travel, they see beauty here. It's like they can compartmentalize. This capacity to compartmentalize. I can speed and go through the light here, but I can't do it in Miami. But that's Rogan's favorite word, enforcement. We'll be back. We'll be back. Lynn Holowesko, thank you very much for coming by and speaking with us.
Pleasure being here with both of you.
Thank you.
And Nick too.
Nick.
And Nick too.
And Nick too.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. We'll see you on Monday.
Yes.
We'll have another wonderful guest, and thank you once again.
Have a
Lynn.
great weekend, y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
96.1 KISS FM.